Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into today's Author Talk series brought to you by the Library Speakers Consortium. The Library Speakers Consortium is a partnership of more than 500 library systems across the US, Canada, and New Zealand with the goal of making Author Talks more accessible to communities of all sizes. I am Brandon Adler, your host and moderator, in conversation with each of the acclaimed authors and presenters that you will hear from throughout our series. Today, we are so thrilled to have best-selling author Lisa Jewell with us to talk about her life as a writer and give us a special preview of her forthcoming novel, Don't Let Him In, out June 24th. I know everyone's ready to get started. So am I. Before we begin, you know that I need to do that standard housekeeping information that keeps everything running smoothly. We have compiled some questions, which were pre-submitted with registration, but you can continue to submit questions during the entirety of the talk by clicking the questions button that's just below the live stream video. If you're already in full screen mode, you might need to minimize so that you can see those tabs underneath the live stream video. Keep in mind, there are a lot of you tuning in today, so we'll get to as many questions as time allows. To add to today's excitement, we are giving away 10 copies of Lisa's newest book, Don't Let Him In. For your chance to win a copy, please scroll down to the resources area to find the submission form. This submission form is only open for those attending the live event. It is open now, and it will remain open for the 15 minutes following the event. Now, to formally introduce our guest for today, Lisa Jewell is the _1 New York Times bestselling author of 23 novels, including None of This Is True, The Family Upstairs, and Then She Was Gone. That was a tongue twister for some reason. As well as The Invisible Girl and Watching You. Her novels have sold over 10 million copies internationally, and her work has also been translated into 29 languages. Welcome, Lisa. We are so happy to have you here. How are you?
I'm really good. I'm so happy to be here. And you've just told me how many people are registered, so I'm buzzing as well, because that's just like fantastic. I'm really grateful to everybody for turning up to watch today.
Well, we have a lot of excited people, so I want to dive right in. But first, do I need to update your bio? Will Don't Let Him In be the 24th novel?
No, that is indeed my 23rd novel. So it is. I always consider the number of books I've written to be the number of books I've written as opposed to published.
Got it.
So yeah, that's number 23.
Well, good. I wanted to check on that. When I said that, I was like, wait, maybe we need to update that. Okay, well, let's just start right off then with the preview of Don't Let Him In. Does that sound okay with you?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so I know that it's not a murder mystery, but it more so a novel examining what it's like to kind of get caught in the web of a sociopath. So can you give us a bit more of a summary of Don't Let Him In?
I think you did a very good job just then of summing it up, actually, because no, it's not a murder mystery, and it's not full of twists and plot things that the reader might not. I mean, it is very action packed and lots of things happen, and it is incredibly readable. But no, it's not a murder mystery per se, and it's been inspired for me just by a sense of frustration I've had over the last few years of watching so many documentaries about these types of men and on occasion women as well, reading memoirs written by women who've been married to men like this, listening to podcasts about multiple, groups of multiple women who've all had experiences with the same man. The sort of man I'm talking about, this kind of Dirty John type character, Tinder swindler type character. And I just found that the thing that was missing from all of these accounts of the experiences that women have had with men like this is the man's voice. I just wanted to understand these crazy men. I just wanted to know what made them tick. Why would you continuously, habitually get into relationships with women purely to con them, to scam them, to hurt them, to scare them, to use them, to manipulate them? Why can't you just go and get a job, marry someone you really like and have a nice life? I just didn't make any sense to me. So that was the sort of jumping off point, was I really wanted to get inside the head of one of these men. So the story is told from 3 points of view, one of which is a first-person point of view from Nick Radcliffe, who is, no, this is not a spoiler, he's the bad guy, and is also told from the point of view of a young woman called Ash. She's just turned 26, and her father died in very tragic circumstances the year before. She's still grieving him, and then this incredibly charming man turns up in her mother's life. Her mother is called Nina. She's about 54. And as charming and delightful as this man is, Ash just gets a really bad feeling about him and starts pursuing some of these doubts that she has about him. And then the third point of view is a delightful woman called Martha Gray, who's living in the beautiful Kentish countryside in England, running a picture perfect florists. And she's married to the perfect man. He's called Alistair, and he is the perfect man. They have a baby together. He's an amazing stepfather to her 2 sons from a previous marriage. But they've been together for about 3 years, and he started doing disappearing acts. He goes away on business, and she can't get hold of him. And yes, so those are the 3 setups. And it's obvious from the get-go that we're set up for a collision course at some point. So you just kind of hop on and go along for the ride.
So you've just told us there that you were really curious and inspired by these documentaries and podcasts that you've been listening to, which is kind of a departure from past inspiration for novels, it seems, right? When you're like out, you've said before that you're usually out in real life and drawing inspiration from often like mundane and banal settings.
Yeah, I feel like I'm letting my interviewers down when it comes to talking about this book, because I've usually had so much fun in interviews talking about these crazy little, minute moments that have triggered an entire sort of 350-word novel in my head. Whereas that didn't happen with this. I just had this itch that I needed to scratch, just wanted to get inside this man's head. I always, because I do write without a plan and no knowledge of where the book is headed, but I do always have a very, very clear image of the first chapter. That's when I know I can start writing a book, when I can open the door into a room and I'm there and I know who's going to be in the room and I know what's going to happen. So with this book, I did have this, for some reason, this very strong feeling or image in my head of a huge white house by the sea on the south coast in England, and a florist van pulling up outside, and a man wearing a baseball cap coming and knocking on the door with a huge bouquet of flowers and giving them to a grieving daughter on the doorstep. In the knowledge that I knew in that moment that the bad man had just met his next victim, but obviously the reader wouldn't know that immediately. So I did have that as a recurring thing in my head for months before I started writing the book. I knew where we were going to start the story.
The house was written in a way that made it seem almost personal, like a place that you had been before.
Did someone tell you that?
No, that's just
you are so perceptive. Did you really?
Yeah, when I read the first chapter, I was like, this sounds like she's like describing something she loves to us.
That's, my goodness, you are really perceptive. That is absolutely. I have a second home on the coast in the south of England, and not dissimilar to the house in this book. It's my seaside house. And in fact, the way it's described throughout the book is my we've been having it renovated. And the way I describe it throughout the book is, I guess, my dream vision of what it would look like after it had been renovated. So gosh, I'm very impressed that you picked up on that. Yeah. That is my house. It is my house.
You're writing. You were telling us. So were there, Heather from North Kingstown Free Library wants to know, where do you get your inspiration for the rest of the characters in the book? So were there any characters that were actually based off of you kind of obsessing over someone?
In this book?
Yes.
No, I usually my characters, I like a mixed bag, because I think when you write the way that I do, from differing points of view, jumping from chapter to chapter, it can be quite confusing for the reader. I already have quite complex ways of constructing my books anyway. So I think it makes it just slightly easier for the reader to understand where they're at in the story if it's you've got a young man or a young woman or a child or an older person. So I always try and just mix it up a bit. So I knew that my Dirty John character would be a middle-aged man. So I knew then that if I wanted to write about one of his victims, that she would be presumably an early to middle-aged woman. And then I thought, well, let's have a young person. Let's throw a young person into the mix. So that's where Ash came from. I just wanted to see it from her point of view as well. And the characters I've got that first chapter. I see it so vividly and so strongly, and I know that I'm going to jump straight into it. But because I don't see beyond the end of that first chapter, these characters, the rest of the characters in the book, even if I've lived with the characters from the first chapter for months, genuinely the rest of the characters in the chapters that follow kind of just arrive in the nick of time. I just get to the end of a chapter and I just think, okay, where do we need to go now? Whose point of view do we need to look at? Let's go and see another woman who has already been a victim or is currently a victim. Now, who could that be? Oh, he was delivering the flowers, maybe. And then that's how it works. So it's not so much that I'm sort of desperate to write about a certain type of person or I've already got them all stored up and ready to go. They kind of just arrive because they have a function to perform. And I don't know what function they're going to need to perform until I get to the point of writing about them. So, yeah.
Which is what makes it doubly amazing that you write nothing down as far as planning goes.
Yeah, I don't have anything. In fact, with this book, I did. No, it wasn't this book. In fact, it was a learnt lesson from this book where I had to spend a long time after I'd finished the book getting all their birthdays right and what have you, because of the very confusing timeline thing that's going on with it. Part of the book is set 4 years earlier. So, yeah, the book that I just finished writing, book number 24, I did actually write some things down before I started writing the novel. I thought I'm going to start writing down the characters' birthdays and where they were born, and just so at least I've got that. But beyond that, beyond just the absolute basics, bare bones, I don't write anything. I haven't got anything to write down. I don't have anything to write down until I've written it down. Does that make any sense? I can't. What I'm trying to say, I suppose, is I can't write a book or plot a book or think about a book or do anything about a book anywhere apart from inside my head or inside the manuscript. So post-it notes, whiteboards, notebooks, those things don't work for me. I wouldn't know what to do with them. I can only write long form straight onto the screen and make the story happen fully and completely, rather than little snatches and chunks and sort of, yeah, I can't do that.
I'm curious about your revision process then, especially if you don't do that in your actual writing process. If you have to do it a little bit in your revision process to kind of dive back into the story.
What you mean, make more notes and be a little bit more?
Yeah.
It's funny, actually, when I pulled out the notebook in order to like write the character birthdays and what have you, I did find actually some I think editing notes I'd made for myself from, I didn't know what it was at first, and then I realized it was Then She Was Gone, which I wrote back in 2015 or 2016. And it's not something I would never have remembered doing it if I hadn't just found those notes. I would have said, no, I don't even write editing notes so clearly I do sometimes have to put things down on paper when I'm, as you say, revising is a very different thing, because then you've got it all there. You know what the whole thing is. So you do have to line everything up and make sure that if you change something in the last third, that doesn't have a ripple back effect on the first third, and be a little bit more logical and organized about it. But yeah, even then I don't always do that.
Yeah, it's like not wanting to meet yourself if you time travel. You don't want to change anything about the story.
Yeah, exactly.
Cassandra from Caldwell Lake George Library is wondering if you have a favorite character in this story and why.
Oh, I always love my I don't like calling them baddies, because although I think he's as close as I've got to a baddie. I tried really hard to give him some redeeming features, but they're a bit thin. But they are the most fun to write. Like Noelle in Then She Was Gone was so much fun to write. Henry Lamb in The Family Upstairs and The Family Remains was so much fun to write. Josie in None of This Is True was so much fun to write. And in this one, Nick Radcliffe, I mean, he was just a dream. I just absolutely loved being in his head, and thinking the way that he thinks and being as awful as he is in order to create his character. So yeah, I am going to say that Nick, as awful as he is my favorite character in the book. Yeah.
Brandy from Pioneer Library System says your books often blend domestic drama with psychological suspense, and Don't Let Him In seems no different, perhaps even with the added element of exploring digital drama and suspense. And Brandy further would like to know, how do you develop that voice, and why is it important for you to explore the themes of domestic and psychological drama?
I'm going to say that I like to explore the themes of domestic and psychological drama because I'm a very domestic person. I live in a tiny bubble, and I like to only kind of know about things that are close to me: my home, my children, my animals, my friends, my plans, my life, my things. I don't really spend a lot of time thinking about the big world and big themes, and big events and big happenings. I coexist in the world with all the big things that are happening, but when it comes to my main focus, it's very small, it's very granular. It's how I keep myself happy. And so it makes sense then that I would focus in on those things. When I write, I want to understand about small things happening to small people, small lives that are blown apart by tiny events that nobody could have foreseen happening, but they completely derail someone's entire existence. I want to understand how people feel when they're being stalked, or I want to understand how somebody feels if they lose a child. I want to go into the small parts of normal people's worlds and just explore them. So not only am I fascinated by it, but I don't think I have the ability as a writer or as a human being to go any bigger or wider than that, really. And I don't like researching. So the idea of writing about I don't know, sort of the different sorts of crime that you could write about, where you'd have to understand about maybe financial markets or police procedure or espionage or, all these other sort of areas of crime that you could write about. I don't know how those things work, and I don't really have any interest in learning about how those things work. So I like to stick to the territory that I'm familiar with and fascinated by.
So you don't like researching, but how often do you actually have to do it?
No, I just don't.
You just don't?
I don't do any research. Obviously, I'll go onto Google. Sure. And type some random question into Google that nobody else apart from a novelist would ever type into Google, but I don't want to go deep into a subject that I don't understand. I don't want to learn lots and lots about an area that I'm only going to need to know about for the duration of writing the book. And I know so many authors who are just so different to me, and they consider that to be part of their job. They can't start writing a novel until they've spent weeks, months making phone calls, doing site visits, reading books, going to visit places that they want to write about, having experiences to feed into the whatever it is that they're going to put on the page. And that's part of writing a book for them. Whereas me, I just literally, okay, I've got to start my book today. And I just start typing, and there's been nothing in the build up to that whatsoever. No preparation, no research, nothing, because I know that I am going to start writing about a world that I understand.
Yeah.
Because it's of interest to me, and I like to write about dark people and dark things and small worlds, and so
Julie is saying, hello, Lisa and Brandon. Lisa, I remember reading your very early books, and they were different to the kind of books you're writing now. Can you explain why you've changed genres in your writing? And I think that that's kind of related just because of your personal experience. And so you started with kind of like a rom-com,
yes,
on a bit of a bet. Can you elaborate more on Julie's question?
Oh, well, I can give you a little rundown of my publishing story. Everybody likes publishing story. Mine is really cute as well, because I was an out of work secretary in the mid-90s. I just got out of a terrible 5-year marriage where I was coercively controlled by my ex-husband. and I was back out in the world. I had a new boyfriend. I was crazy, just in love and euphoric to be back in London, to be back having my freedom. I was in my mid-20s. And in the middle of all this euphoria, I found myself having a very drunken conversation with a very good friend of mine. He was my boyfriend then. He's now my husband, of my boyfriend at the time. She was very drunk. I was very drunk. We got chatting about future plans. We were like at that sort of, I think I just turned 27 or was just about to turn 27, which is a kind of cusp age. I always think it's a kind of age where you start thinking that you should know what you're doing by now and you should have a plan. And I'd been happily just sort of temping as a secretary for a few years. And she caught me off guard by asking me what I wanted to do. And because I was drunk, I told her that I wanted to write a novel, which the minute I said it, I just thought, well, everybody wants to write a novel and I'm 26 years old. Of course, I'm not going to write a novel. But luckily for me, this amazing woman, Yasmin, who's still a very good friend of mine to this day, jumped on it. And she could see that I was getting away from the point, which was that she really wanted me to, if I wanted to write a novel, she thought I should. So to pull me back in, she said, look, just write 3 chapters and I'll take you out for dinner to your favorite restaurant. So I did. We were on holiday at the time. So the minute I got back to London, I borrowed my boyfriend's computer. Luckily, he did have a home computer back in the olden days. And I typed these 3 chapters. And my friend Yasmin insisted that I needed to send them out to some literary agents. I did get 9 rejection letters from the 10 original submissions. And then the 10th agent wrote back. It was quite a snitty kind of, she didn't say she loved it. She said it needed a hell of a lot of work, but she'd like to see it. So I went off and did a hell of a lot of work on it, and finished it and delivered it to her. And she got me a publishing deal in 1998 with Penguin here in the UK. And it was published in 1999. And it was the best-selling debut novel in the UK of that year. And it was, as you say, it was a rom-com. But funnily enough, I had to go, they republished it last year. It's called Ralph's Party. And they republished it last year to celebrate its 25th birthday. And I had to go through a box of old press cuttings to find, memorabilia from the time. And I found the synopsis that I had sent out with my original 3 chapters, bearing in mind that I hadn't written the rest of the book when I sent out those 3 chapters. And the synopsis was for a thriller. So I had started that book imagining that I was going to write a thriller, but I got completely sidetracked, waylaid. I was too happy. I was too in love. I was too just living the moment in London in the 90s, just living living that, young, free and not single at all, young, free and in love lifestyle. And I wanted to write about that. So my first book, a huge success, a rom-com, even though I'd intended it to be a psychological thriller, right at the outset. And then once you've had a very successful book in one genre, it's quite hard. You can't just leapfrog around from genre to genre. You have to be very careful, because a readership is a very delicate and beautiful and remarkable thing. And you want to treat that readership very carefully. So I have very sneakily, without anybody noticing over the years, over the course of 23 books, have managed to just sneakily move out of the romantic comedy genre via a kind of midsection of my career where I was writing kind of darker, family-based novels about, like compulsive hoarding disorder and donor sperm insemination and multiply married men. So like taking a theme and writing around that. And then I snuck in a dead body. And then I kind of could slide quite seamlessly into writing. And nobody ever complained. None of my readers ever wrote to me and said, why did you do that? I like your rom-coms. So I think I kind of evolved at the same rate as my readers. But the brilliant thing about the point at which I find myself now in my career is not only have I kept a lot of my early readers, but I've also built up a new readership that I'm still building up on a daily basis, which is an incredible thing to be able to do at this point in a career.
You're pretty active with and engaged with your readers, though, too. Like you send out newsletters all the time with Simon and Schuster, and you're on socials and always interacting there. So you're doing a good job at keeping up with your readers as well.
Yes, it's obviously there are so many things that are important, and it's hard to prioritize what's the most important thing to be a successful writer and to have a good career. Obviously, writing good books is up there. Having a good relationship with your editorial team, taking good editorial advice, being nice. I think everybody in publishing knows that. I don't think there's any other industry where being nice is as important as it is as the publishing industry. And yeah, being interactive with my readers is just hugely. I cannot see the point of being on social media if I don't use it to engage with readers. If I'm constantly just putting pictures of my face on a screen and then running away to get on with my life and not interacting with the comments underneath, and like having a inbox full of unread messages, or paying somebody else to pretend to be me to answer my messages, I couldn't see the point of it. I just think if you're promoting yourself via a social media channel, the people who follow you on that social media channel platform, they already like you. So really it's limited in terms of how many more books you can sell from being on there. But what you can do on those platforms is build really, really, really good relationships with your readers. And so I do that. And that's very much a part of my job. I consider that to be a very big part of my job, is spending that time every day, on holiday, at the weekends, replying to messages, replying to comments. Very important. And I really enjoy doing it. It's wild and wonderful sometimes as well. There's some crazy stuff in those inboxes. But yeah, it's definitely worth doing.
It adds a level of originality to like being a fan of your writing. So I think people appreciate that. Okay, so back to Don't Let Him In. We have a couple more questions, and then we'll kind of just transition into more of your life as a writer and some of your other titles. Alyssa from Montgomery County Library says, what was different or unique about writing this book versus some of your others to you?
Very good question. And I was having this conversation with someone, I can't remember, the other day, about how every book, and it takes me about between, let's say, 5 to 9 months to write a novel. Closer to 9 months on the whole. And in the time that I'm inhabiting the same space as my novel, I'm a good compartmentalizer. I can walk away from my book and not let it color my life, but it does leave a stain. It leaves an imprint of some description that is almost like in the like a nostalgic, that the experience of writing that book has a certain color or a feel to it. And I've only just realized that recently, that each book has a certain very distinctive feel to it. And this one, weirdly, I don't know why, it felt like being in a really modern white kitchen, like a really expensive designer kitchen. I can't really explain it any other way than that. But that's what the experience of writing this book felt like. It felt, it's not, the spaces inside the book, they're just there. It's beautiful cottages. It's this beautiful house by the seaside. It's lovely restaurants.
Yeah.
Everything happens in really nice spaces with really lovely civilized people. There's not a lot of like depravity, or there's nothing shabby going on. And all the characters in it, apart from obviously Nick Radcliffe, are just really solid, decent, modern, very modern people. So that book, it just felt like that. It felt very modern. It felt very clean. It felt like somebody just wiped down all the surfaces, and I can't really explain it. It's very strange. So that's how it felt. And I remember saying to my editor, like just after I delivered it, or shortly before, I said I didn't feel like I was in this book while I was writing it, which is a really weird thing as well. And I worried that meant something bad, that I didn't feel like I was in it while I was writing it. But ultimately, I don't think it was bad. It was just a different experience. And each book does feel like a completely different experience. And I like that. I like that each book feels so distinct from each other, because that means I'm doing something different every time.
Mhm.
and going into different corners of these little worlds, and having different experiences. So the book that I just finished writing, my 24th book, felt so different. I can't tell you, was that it did not, it all happens in scruffy, shabby houses, and everybody's like needs a shower. And I just felt like I was in this room, and it was like a dark room, and there were cobwebs in the corner. And I felt like every time I got away from the book, I felt a sense of relief that I could walk away from it for a bit, because it was so claustrophobic. And so, yeah. Anyway, that was a very long answer to a very simple question, but that's how, what can I say? It's very weird being a writer.
Maybe you're just putting yourself in the books in different ways now, like your house, for example.
Yeah. It's funny, but I just think readers would never necessarily feel any of those. And it's like not just me and my different books, but different writers and their books. Different ways that writers make books. And ultimately, a reader picks up a book and turns pages and reads a story, and they would never, ever understand those huge differences between the processes of all those different people, and all those writers living completely different lives in completely different places, writing their books in completely different circumstances. You know, I've got a friend who writes all of her books in a beach hut, like overlooking the sea, freezing cold, like with about 5 layers of clothes on. Whereas I'm like, I kind of wrote most of my last book in bed, tucked up nice and warm. So all those differences, and it doesn't kind of, the reader never knows, which I find fascinating.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's a lot of fun talking about just research process, or writing process and research process for those who do research. Because everything is different every time you talk to somebody.
Yeah.
Megan from Jefferson County Public Library is saying, without giving any spoilers, is there a scene in Don't Let Him In that you're especially proud of?
Ooh. Oh, right. So for me, I am the epilogue queen. The most important part of a book for me is the last chapter. I actually think that you can write a brilliant book, and if the last chapter is a disappointment, I want my reader to absolutely put the book down and feel something, not just put the book down and go, oh. I want them to either feel satisfied, uneasy, confused, sad, emotional, happy, or just something. I need my reader to feel something when they finish the book. And so often that the only place where I can find to put that, because closing chapters of a book are usually like tying up the old loose ends and answering the unanswered questions and putting all the characters back in nice, safe, cozy places. So I always use my epilogue as an opportunity to do something to make the reader feel something. And I really wasn't sure about how I was going to close this book off. But actually, that's not my answer to the question. That's not the chapter or the moment I'm the most proud of. Because I write without a plan, the bits I'm always the most proud of are the bits where I managed to make something out of nothing. As I don't know if that makes any sense, because I haven't got a plan, and I'm writing and I'm writing and I'm writing, and I suddenly realize that I've given myself a gift somewhere in the narrative, and I can use it, and I can make it work in terms of, you know, upending the plot a little bit, or moving the plot along, or giving the reader a little thrill, or doing something to a character that I hadn't been planning to do to a character that just completely changes the pace and the tone of the book. And yes, so there are a couple of moments in the book, but because they all revolve around a certain act that happens halfway through the book.
Yeah.
Where we really see another side of Nick Radcliffe. I can't really talk about them, but yeah, I know which ones they are. So
everyone will just have to make sure that they grab a copy of the book in a couple of weeks. So Mindy from Mawa Public Library says, what do you hope readers remember from this book?
Oh, see, now this is a question that I've been asked many, many times. What would you like your readers to take away from, what message or what?
Yeah.
And I just kind of don't ever think or feel like that about a book. My most important thing is that my reader picks up a book, turns the pages so fast that they forget to look at their phone, maybe stays up an hour past their bedtime, maybe lets everybody else go off to dinner while they just stay on the sun lounger for another couple of hours. That's what I want. And then, as I say, at the end of the book, I want them to feel something. But genuinely, I don't know if this is doing my craft a disservice. I don't mind if they don't take anything away from it other than that was great. I really enjoyed it. But, you know, readers often do find things in a book that I didn't know I'd put into them. I didn't deliberately put something in the book, and readers will take it anyway. And that's another lovely thing about being very interactive on my social media platforms, is I get to have those conversations with readers about moments that they've had in one of my books that have really connected with them, or taken them back to something that was important in their life, or inspired them in moving forward in their lives. But I personally, if a reader finishes my book and just says that was bloody brilliant, that'll do for me. They don't need to take anything else from it.
Well, I think that you've pretty much got that on locked down as far as even your pacing goes. You're a master at pacing things. So you, not only is your writing incredible, but the pacing and the tension that you build, you can't put the book down anyway. You stay on the sun lounger. And Lana is asking, I've noticed you have short, fast-paced chapters, which I love. Is this how you've always written? Did you have to learn how to write in this short, fast-paced way? Or did it come naturally to you? And would I be correct to say that you do this on purpose?
Okay. So I don't know. I need to refer back to some of my earlier books. Someone was reading one of my rom-coms a few months ago and wrote to me to tell me, and a fan of my short chapters, to tell me that they just read a chapter in one of my older books that was, I think they said 36 pages long or something. So clearly at some point I wasn't consciously, but I think it is slightly on purpose, in as much as I like to write 1,000 words a day, and 1,000, it's nice to write a chapter. Mm-hmm. I like to get to the end of my writing session and have moved the story along far enough for me to say, okay, I'm going to end that chapter there and move on. So it is sort of tied in with the rhythm of my work. I don't like to write too many words in a day because I don't have a plan. So if I write too many words in a day, I could just go horribly wrong, because I need to walk away from my work after 1,000 words and take time away from it and let it sort of slot into place in my head. So I think that just lends itself naturally to writing short chapters. Mm-hmm. Also, I love short chapters. Personally, as a reader, I love them. So if I can return that gift to my readers that other writers have given me of the short chapters, then definitely. I love
short chapters too.
Yeah.
Erica from Daniel Boone Regional Library says, I am so excited for the release of Don't Let Him In. I know readers are excited before a book release, but what emotions run through you as a writer, and how do you prepare for that?
Okay, so back in the day, when I did not know how my book was going to be received until it was literally in the bookshops. There was no Vine, there was no NetGalley, there was no Goodreads early reviewers. There was nothing. So I would have to wait until my book had been published to know whether my readers liked it or not. So I would spend most of the build-up. At this point in the process, I'd be terrified, absolutely terrified, because the only people who've told you it's good are people who've got sort of skin in the game, that like your friends or your editor or your agent. And you just think, well, you are going to say it's good, aren't you? But nowadays, because so many people have already got hold of my books and reviewed them, and I see, obviously, not everybody loved it. I've seen some absolutely stinking reviews of it. Some people really didn't like it at all, and that's fine. The majority of people who've read it have enjoyed it, which means, because I know that most of my readers, I feel reassured that my readers who haven't read an early review copy are going to like it on the basis of the early reviewers, which means that I can just get excited. And that's so nice not to have the terror anymore, not to have the fear. Yeah. Just to walk towards publication thinking this is going to be fun. Yeah, not everyone's going to like it, but enough people are going to like it for me to feel positive about it and for me to feel upbeat, having a conversation like this and discussing it. And and just not having that, my biggest fear is disappointing readers, is my writing that book that everyone goes, oh yeah, not sure about this one. So once I know that that's not happened, just good times, fun. I love it.
We've had a lot of people ask already today about whether or not your writing gives you nightmares at night. And I would imagine that the anxiety in early days probably did keep you up at night.
Yes, definitely. The anxiety and the adrenaline and the nerves and everything. But yeah, no, the things I write about, the themes I write about, the darkness doesn't keep me awake at night, but I do, because I write without a plan. And I do walk away from my book every day and spend time with it in my head. Sometimes that can turn up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And you know what I do actually now? If that ever happens, when I'm having a challenging time writing a book and I wake up at 4 in the morning and my book lands in my head, instead of fighting it, I just think, okay, I'm just going to go with this. I'm going to use this. I'm going to open up my head, and maybe I can solve this problem before my alarm clock goes off. I will have this solved. So I try and make a positive out of it rather than it being a negative.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. So Susan from Ocean City Free Public Library says your novels often explore the hidden lives behind seemingly ordinary people. When you're developing a story, how do you choose which characters deserve to have their secrets unraveled, and do they ever take the story in a direction you didn't expect? Which you kind of touched on this a little earlier.
But it's a good question in terms of, I like to leave my characters, even the ones that I come straight into chapter 1 with, the ones I've been thinking about for ages, I still give them leeway to change path, to change direction. So I like to leave a lot of ambiguity and open spaces with most of my characters. Some of them I know I can't mess with. Usually my detective character, usually the character who's asking the questions and finding out what's going on. So a character like Ash in this book, I'm not going to mess with her. I'm not going to give her a twist. But usually I do like to keep a lot of flexibility in my characters, just to see what's going to happen with them. And I can say this now about the book that I've just finished writing, even though it's a massive spoiler, because by the time the book comes out, everyone will have forgotten everything about this conversation. But I started writing book 24 with this character in my mind's eye. And I wasn't sure what he was up to, but I knew it was no good. And I introduced him to my amateur detective character in an early chapter, and she looks at him and thinks, I don't like the look of him. There's something bad about him. And then I delved into his character. I went first person into him, and he wasn't bad. And actually, I had to flip the whole dynamic between him and his girlfriend. It was going to be a bit of a, not domestic abuse, but a very twisted, warped relationship. But as I was writing his character, he revealed himself to me. It sounds pretentious, but he just revealed his softness and his kindness and his empathy to me. And I thought, no, this is all the wrong way around. Whereas his girlfriend, who I didn't ever get in her, I didn't write from her point of view. I could see that it was a twisted. It was the other way around, that she was going to be the abuser and he was going to be the victim, which gave me something really interesting to write about, because I'd never written about that before. So, yeah, my characters can often completely surprise me and do things that I wasn't imagining them capable of doing, or sometimes not do things that I was hoping they might be capable of doing, because they're just too nice.
So book 24, we're expecting that one in 2026?
Correct. Okay. Yes. Around the same time, summertime next year.
Okay. Yeah. Well, even on the note of not giving a twist to like your detective character, Richard from Kenora Public Library says, how do you get rid of a character that is becoming more involved in a story than you want?
Oh, gosh, I'm trying to remember if I've ever had to do that. In fact, this isn't actually in one of my thrillers. This was in one of my romantic comedies, and it was the moment where I took a big step away from writing romance, and it was a book called The Truth About Melody Brown, and because I was used to writing romantic relationships as the backbone of my books, I introduced my female character to a male character very early on in the book, and there was an instant attraction and blah blah blah. But also she was trying to solve the mystery of her childhood. She had memory loss for the first 9 years of her life, and had started getting flashbacks to a childhood that she didn't remember. And this guy just kept showing up. Like, in the end, I just thought, no, she's got to end this relationship right now. She's got to say, no, I don't have time for this right now. I'm sorry. I have this huge existential crisis going on and I need to figure it out all by myself. So she just dumped him. But he did come back at the end. He came back at the end and they had a little bit of a romantic moment at the end. But yeah, it is. Sometimes you do write a character into a book and just think, I really wish I hadn't brought this person into it. Because number one, maybe they know too much and they're like ruining the tension and the pace because they know too much, or their point of view is too accurate. Or they're just taking up paper space when they're not actually moving the plot along at all. And yeah, you just have to either cut them out or send them off in another direction.
Okay. Whitney from Urbandale Public Library says, your novels tend to begin with a mystery and then unravel backward through memory, perception, and sometimes trauma. How do you balance plot structure with emotional depth when planning a story, which you don't plan?
I don't plan a story, but I do have to remind myself sometimes. I don't remind myself. It's more like subconscious that I understand that at certain points in the action, and actually, I like writing the action. I don't love writing the action as much as I love writing those moments of introspection. And so that if you read enough of my novels, you will see that there will be points in the book where I will just sit a character down on a bench or on a beach or in a dark room and check in with them and get inside their head and work out how they're feeling about everything. And you will see when I'm doing that, because I love doing those scenes. I don't use very much punctuation. So it's just these huge streams of consciousness that are usually like 2 paragraphs long, and those are because when I'm writing that, and in fact, ironically, when I'm writing action, I write really slowly because you're constantly having to figure out where the character's hand would be, or what side of the car that would happen, or those sorts of technical things. Whereas when you get inside your character's head, you can just freewheel and just get in there and then I write those really, really quickly. So it kind of comes naturally, but I am aware that it's a very important part of what I do, because I don't just write action thrillers, they're psychological thrillers, so I need to have those psychological moments, and I really enjoy those.
Great. Well, some of the thrillers this day and age, a lot of people request content warnings. And Kate from Greenwood Library says, how do you decide on whether or not to add content warnings in your books? And how long have you been adding these warnings?
I don't think I do.
I haven't seen one.
I don't think I do. I don't think I've ever had warnings. No, I haven't.
Like, let me look at this one right now.
Yeah, I'm just not sure there's anything in there that's content warning-y. I don't. There's.
Yeah, I mean, it's
as far as I'm aware.
Thriller. So I think that is the content warning.
Yeah, I don't like getting my hands dirty when I write. I really don't want to get my hands dirty. I like to try and keep them as clean as possible. I don't want to go into rooms I don't need to go into, or describe acts that I don't need to describe. So I feel like, if a child dying is content worthy, then a content warning worthy, then, well, yeah, obviously, but I wouldn't want to go deep into the descriptions of how that happened, so I don't know, but it wouldn't be up to me, I guess, if my editors felt that was something that I'd written a book that required that level of transparency from the outset. I guess I wouldn't have an issue with it. I just want my readers to enjoy my books. I don't want anybody reading my books who's not going to enjoy them. I was going to have a horrible time with them, so it wouldn't bother me. But no, as far as I'm aware, and I do look at my books. I've never
thinking of in None of This Is True.
Yeah,
like the insinuation of what Walter was maybe,
but he wasn't.
I know, but
that's the thing. Yes, yeah, the insinuation is there, and the whole book is built around this idea that you don't know if anybody's telling the truth or not.
Yeah.
So it's never described. It's alluded to very, very subtly. You kind of know what Josie is saying, but equally she was lying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Was that a spoiler? I don't know. He didn't do it. But although he did though pick her up as a 13-year-old girl and groom her into a relationship at the age of 16.
Which you learned that pretty early on.
Yes, you learn that pretty early on. But again, I don't go into. I don't, like I say, I like to keep my hands clean. These things happen, and I want to write about them, and I want them to be part of my stories. But there's lines that I just won't cross because I don't think it services the book particularly, or the reader, or anyone, or me as a writer.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Well, we have had a lot of questions about the audiobook process and the narrators of audiobooks for your books. And I really think that until The Family Upstairs, most of your books just had one narrator, and then you kind of started getting this cast of narrators, especially in None of This Is True, which was a very fascinating audiobook to listen to. So Melissa says, how do you find your audiobook presenters? Amy says, do you get to choose the narrator? Are you part of this process?
To an extent. So here, all my audiobooks are recorded by my UK publishers here in London, because obviously my characters are English, so we're going to use English character actors, and that will make sense. And Penguin Random House have their own suite of recording studios in the head office, very high tech, all brand new. And they have an amazing team of audio marketeers, audio producers. And they're the ones who put the plan together for the book. And what they tend to do is, they do like these sort of throwing out the dream ticket, kind of like, we're going to ask this incredibly famous actor because if you don't ask, you don't get. And we haven't never quite got there. Though Nicola Walker, I don't know if Nicola Walker is famous in America, but she's huge here in the UK, who voiced Alex in None of This True. That was a major coup. But then when we get down to nuts and bolts, they tend to send me little voice clips of actors who they think might work. And I can choose a preference from those 2 or 3 voice clips. And of course, that's got to somehow marry up with the voice that I had in my head when I was writing the book. So I do get a certain amount of choice in the process. And then everybody comes into the recording studios. I'm not part of it. I was there because I recorded, I've got a voice part on None of This Is True. So they brought me into the studio to do that. And while I was there, they also got me to do an online interview with Nicola Walker, who was the actor who did Alex, which is available at the end of the audiobook, the conversation between me and Nicola Walker at the end of. But generally speaking, I'm not there. I'm not part of it. And the first I know about it is when I get sent an early file. And I did listen. Last week, I was sent an early audio file for Don't Let Him In, and I listened to it last week, and it's brilliant. It's so good. I don't want to encourage people not to buy print or go to the library and take a lovely book out, but this is a really good audio book. The performances are incredible.
Yeah, I'll have to listen. I tend to do both. I listen and read. I feel like I catch things that I didn't in one or the other, and plus I'm in the car a lot, so I need to.
Perfect. Yeah. Perfect. Yes.
So yes, get both. Okay, so we have some people asking about the Marvel universe and how you ended up in that.
They
loved.
Yes. Here we go. Let me grab it. This is what we're talking about. That was handy, wasn't it, that I had it right there?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is my little turn in the Marvel universe. Very unexpected. How this happened to me, I do not know to this day. How this landed in my lap and how I got to do this. But yes, 2022, I guess, I was invited by the commissioning editor, a commissioning editor at Disney Books, and Disney publish Marvel, who was starting a new series of books called Marvel Crime, which is a a first in the Marvel universe of full-length fiction novels using Marvel characters. And my agent was reading this email to me down the phone, and I was just sitting there thinking, "Oh, come on, I don't know anything about Marvel. I can't write a book about Marvel." I was thinking of superheroes and capes and what have you. And then he said, the character they want you to write about is Jessica Jones. And I love Jessica Jones. My husband and I watched all the Netflix series. She's just a brilliant, brilliant character. And also she's a private investigator. And I just thought, well, I can write about a private investigator. So I said yes to taking on this project. And that was, you know how I said earlier, it takes me about 5 to 9 months to write a novel.
Yeah.
This one took me 14 months. 14 months. I remember I was talking about those 4 o'clock in the morning wake ups, like pretty much every single night. This was a solid golden nightmare. Honestly, it was so hard. I thought it was going to be fun.
Did you have to do more research for that one?
I did. I read the entirety of the Jessica Jones comic book. It's called Alias. It was her. I think there'd been 3 sets of comic book series. Brian Bendis is the name of the writer of the comic books. And I read the first one because I knew I wanted to set it while she was a private investigator. In the second series, I think she's a journalist. And yeah, so I had to read the whole series of that. Actually quite brilliant. Really, really good. And then I just sort of set off with one of my crazy first chapters in mind and just thought I would do it the way I always do it, just like making it up as I go along. And it went horribly, horribly, horribly wrong. And this book is 90,000 words long, as most of my books are 90,000 words. And there is another 90,000 words of words ripped out of this as I was writing in a document somewhere that will never see the light of day. I made so many mistakes writing this book. I just genuinely. And then I couldn't get back on track until I remembered that I was writing a Lisa Jewell novel, and just sort of I just thought, what do you like writing about? What do you like writing about? What do your readers like reading about? And I just thought, creepy people, weird houses, England. I had already brought Jessica to England for half. Jessica spends half of this book in a village in Essex, funnily enough. And yeah, so once I stripped it back and thought, just, you've got Jessica. I knew I was so comfortable with Jessica from the minute I started writing her. It was just the world that she inhabited. I felt less comfortable writing about. So once I put Jessica into a Lisa Jewell world, it was all fine. It's all fine. But 14 months of hell
to get there.
Yes. But I'm having said that, I want everyone to know it's a fun book. It's really, I think, a lot of people haven't read it, and I understand that, because I would probably be dubious about reading a book in a superhero genre by one of my favorite psychological thriller writers. But people have thoroughly enjoyed it. So if anybody does want to give it a bash, you should.
So
I worked really hard on it.
Speaking of, you said you watched all the Netflix series, and Gabrielle from LA County is saying, have you been approached to turn your books into a film or TV series? And I believe last year there was an announcement that none of this was true. Was picked up by Netflix. Is that right?
So I genuinely, although you would think that like writing and TV and film were kind of running down the same tracks, I just cannot wrap my head around how the film and TV world works. It's so alien to me. I don't understand any of it. People say things to me and I'm just like, oh, great. And then I don't know. So I've had so many of my books go under option to TV and film production companies from the get-go, from Rouse Party onwards. I've had amazingly overexcited, high-octane meetings with producers and writers and teams of people who are just desperate to get my books onto the screen, because I think my books do read very filmically and visually. So I can see why production companies would think, oh, this would make a great bit of television. And so pretty much all my books have been down that path, and none of them have ever progressed. And I do wonder if part of that is to do with the weird way I write, that the minute they get somebody trying to break it up into chunks, it all falls apart. That's my pet theory anyway, that the minute they try to make it make sense on screen, the whole thing falls apart, because it was all just held together with like bits of my weird brain. So
They plan more.
Yeah, exactly. So that's my theory. But yes, none of this is true. It went straight to Netflix. Usually I sell the option rights to a production company who then have to find a streamer or a film studio who will want to pay to produce it. Whereas I sold None of This Is True because it's set around a Netflix documentary. I sold it directly to Netflix, which I think hopefully means it's got a higher chance than most of my books to be made. I know that the screenplay's been written, and that screenplay is going to a writer's table, which sounds very exciting, in Hollywood next week. So hopefully at the end of that writer's table, there'll be a script going out to directors.
Yeah, so there is still movement. So that does have hope in there.
Yes. But honestly, the way that industry works, I just don't. They all know. They all sort of like know what they're talking about, and they kind of expect me to know what they're talking about, and I really don't. So,
okay, well, the question I love to close with, and Cheryl from Harris County Public Library here has beat me to it, is what are you currently reading that you suggest everybody run out to the library and check out immediately?
Oh, wasn't I going to have prepared this?
You were, yes.
I was. And what did I do? I went off and just didn't prepare it at all. So I'm now going to immediately look at my Audible library. I'm sorry, you can probably hear my dog barking in the background. The last brilliant book that I read. So I'm currently reading a book called The Names by Florence Knapp. There you go. I don't know if it's a huge publication over here in the UK. I don't know if you have it over there. It's called The Names. It's written by an Irish writer called Florence Knapp. And it's about a woman in an abusive relationship who gives birth to a son. And her husband wants her to call the son after him. So he's called Gordon, and he wants her to call the child Gordon. But she wants to call the child Julian, and her daughter wants to call the child Bear. And it just goes off on these three like sliding doors things of the different life that she and her family, and in particular the son, have, dependent upon which name she went and registered him as. So in one storyline, he's called Gordon, and the husband is happy, and she stays in the abusive relationship with him. In another storyline, she's called Julian, which is a compromise name, which doesn't really make anyone happy. And in the third storyline, she calls him Bear, which brings around a completely different outcome for everyone. So it's very clever, and it's very beautifully written. And yes, but I don't know if it's published in the US. I hope it is.
Well, thank you for the suggestion. I think that we can find it anyway. So I warned you that this hour would fly by. Thank you so much for talking to us for the last hour. It's truly been a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, thank you for asking me such wonderful questions, everyone, Brandon and everybody else who contributed to question. It's been wonderful. Could do another hour.
I also want to extend a huge thank you to all of our viewers for tuning into the Author Talk today. Without your support, none of this would be possible, and we thank you for choosing to spend your time with us. As a reminder, if you scroll down below the live stream video, you can see the resources area, which contains a link to pre-order Lisa's book, Don't Let Him In, as well as a link to our book giveaway submission form, which will close in 15 minutes. We look forward to everyone joining us later this month when we kick off our K-12 summer reading series with New York Times bestselling author Katherine Applegate on June 24th. Be sure to register for this and lots of other great events on your library's event page. I'm Brandon Adler, and thank you for joining us.